So hello fellow Earthlings, this is Earthling 6455463728. And what happens to the rest of the world when a dictator is ruling the United States of America? That's a question that I wanted to mull over. So anyway, as you might know by now, I'm going to talk about myself. And you can always feel free to fast forward through this. So I am Earthling 64 yada yada yada, and I'm a guy who is currently taking care of his demented uncle in the way of dementia. Not that he's like a crazy whatever person. I also have a certain amount of education, no PhD. I feel like that's a waste of time. I have traveled a lot in a big spurt, gained and lost a bunch of weight, and I feel like I can fix a great many things, from my body to vehicles and appliances. Anyway, what happens to the world when a dictator rules America? And America is the only functioning superpower in the world. Well, I think that can be answered by what if Trump was a dictator when he asked, I think it's Denmark, about Greenland. What would have happened if Trump was a dictator when he asked Iraq about its oil? And what would happen to any tiny little country if the US had asked it for practically anything? Well, I think there's a movie called Brightside, which is, I think, basically the idea of what would it have been like if Superman wasn't nice. I think part of the story of Superman is kind of funny when you think about it, because in the story of Superman in the comics, anytime Superman encountered an obstacle, it was always pointed out that he was super whatever particular characteristic that you wanted to put after super. So he was super smart, he was super fast, he was super strong, and incidentally, he was also super nice. Here's this guy who can defeat almost anybody, and yet he didn't want power, he didn't want riches or wealth, he didn't want to tell anybody what to do. And that's the thing. He was super everything, including super nice. If you are a dictator of the country that has the most nuclear weapons in the world, probably the most drones in the world, definitely the most aircraft carriers in the world, where you can basically move a base. You can move a base, a military base, to any place that you want in the world. I think even more so than in America's past, you get to do whatever you want. Because the thing about it, of course, when you're a dictator, even when things are not really going that well, you still get to be a dictator, because that's the whole point. You dictate to everybody else what they're going to do. Now, there are some basic things that you have to do, I suppose, in order to remain a dictator. And I think Rules for Rulers by CGP Grey, I think that's one of the videos that really turned me on to CGP Grey, which incidentally was just based on a book by someone else, but he condensed it, and the animations are so cool. But I think Rules for Rulers shows that as long as the people who are keeping you in power are basically happy, then you don't have to worry about anybody else being happy in your country. And that, for that matter, in the world, right? And he was showing why the rules for rulers in different countries might be slightly different. The idea is that in a okay working democracy, that you can't afford to break too many of the gears, I guess, in terms of hurting or slighting different groups of people, because then the democracy might break down and things won't function and you won't have as much power anymore. I think that China kind of proves, though, that your country can be pretty wealthy without being a democracy, and it can kind of work really well without being a democracy. And I guess it kind of contradicts Rules for Rulers a little bit, in that China seeks to keep as many of the people of its people okay. And I suppose Rules for Rulers might say, well, it's not one of these single item based economies like an oil economy or natural gas or aluminum or whatever economy, where the idea is as long as you keep that one thing working, you don't have to care about anybody else. But China kind of shows that you have this Communist Party, and for everything that you can say about China has actually changed in the way that it's run recently. I wasn't aware of this, but China used to roll over, change its leaders every 10 years or so, except for this last guy who really basically made himself a dictator now, so that he doesn't have to change over. And I think there's a couple of years where he would have had to cede power to someone else, but now he doesn't, because he got enough power. And China is now officially a dictatorship again, and it hasn't stopped working. As a matter of fact, based on the pandemic, we can see that it still works pretty well, actually. Maybe even better than democracies, which seem to be sucking quite right now. But if the US had a emperor, a king, a generalissimo, Trump, I think that there would be negotiations going on for Denmark to give Greenland to the US. Of course, I don't know that Denmark is really worth anything. I think maybe there's a lot of oil over there, but the US already has enough oil that it can try to drill for in the Arctic and so on. So it would just be somebody who doesn't understand how the world works, going around the world and doing things that are pretty much unnecessary. But I think that just like if Superman was not super nice, as in the movie Brightside, I think it is, and I think Brightside kind of overplays its hand a little bit. The kid at the end of the thing, he's just, apparently he still wants people to treat him nicely, because there he is having people treat him okay because they don't know that he's the cause of some of these problems. But I don't know why people don't just take their money and leave. I guess because they're comfortable in their country, they're not going to have as much power anywhere else. So I guess, they might figure that the person who comes after might want to cause problems for them. But I think overall that it would really suck to live in a world. Well, it wouldn't suck for everybody necessarily. It would suck for the people who have stuff that the US dictator would want. If you're an Iraqi and your country is benefiting from having a certain amount of oil, then if you didn't have that oil field revenue anymore, then your life might suck. If you were, I don't know, China or someplace where there's iron ore or lithium ore and the US wanted it, it would probably just go and take. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of one of these South American countries, I believe it was, that had guano resources, and they wanted to renegotiate, or they were allowing another South American country to their companies to extract that guano. And at some point they got a leader who said, let's change that, let's not do that anymore. Well, all that happened is that the South American country that was they had been getting the guano, they just said, no, I don't think so. And they just used their military force to go and make that part of the other country part of their country. And maybe, you know, in the future, it could be good if America did something like that. If it went around the world saying, okay, you're part of America now. You're part of America now. All of you, these different places, this is part of America now. Of course, there are lots of places that are parts of America that are not states of America, where a lot of things happen that are not necessarily good. Like there are a lot of clothes, for example, that people see stamped made in America that are in America, but some of the rules about how you take care of workers, they don't apply to those places in America. So those places can import and have workers working under poor conditions with poor pay, basically sweatshops. What I'm saying is right now they have sweatshops that are not on the mainland America, but in some of these territories of America, they have sweatshops where people from third world countries go to make clothes that are technically made in America, but again, they don't have to treat the people properly. They don't have minimum wage stuff that applies. Yeah. So it's possible that those new territories of America would just remain run in a similar or worse way than they are before or in America. And who's to even stop slavery from coming back, you know? Anyway, I'm getting kind of long, and I figure I'll end here. So, feel free to like or dislike. Dislike makes more sense than unlike, right? Dislike, share, subscribe, comment, or any of the other things people do or that you would want someone to do to something that you created. So have a good one. Peace.